Welcome to the Mike Show, episode number 2. Today's guest is the host of the podcast Sci-Fi and Friends. I'm very excited for today's episode because right away, talking to this guy, we just kind of were able to hit it off real well and had lots of awesome conversations off camera. So I'm very excited to have a conversation on camera about his podcast and his processes and just kind of topics of all sorts. Please welcome Coltyn Seifert. Getting that sci-fi vibe going.
You got that dungeon vibe, like a fantasy world vibe where the barbarian takes you into the dungeon or something, which I'm all about. I'm all about it.
Hell yeah, man. Before we just get off the rails, this podcast that I'm doing is all about the behind the scenes of new media content creators. So I want to first dive into your podcast, Sci-Fi and Friends. Would you say it's kind of like a variety show, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's very variety-based. It's very based on my interests, and you might have heard Rogan say that, and the show is really based off Rogan's show. There's a concept in writing called copywriting, and Jack London is one of the most famous authors to do it, but basically he took Rudyard Kipling's work and rewrote it word by word, longhand. And so that's kind of how he taught himself how to write in one sense. So I took that concept with Rogan's show and, drew out, I'm like, okay, here's the table. Here's where Rogan sits. That means that there has to be a camera here. And I just replicated it. And I thought, okay, we're going to go 2 or 3 hours just like he does. And the whole rule of thumb, if I don't want to talk to you, you're not coming on. I have to I have to have some sort of interest in what you do or who you are to come on. And
right.
In doing that, I just kind of follow my interests, and then that brings out the passion and the cool things inside of that person because you're interested, so you have to dig for them. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. It used to be called the Bodcast, which bod stands for bag of dicks.
Okay.
Yeah. Back in the day,
is that one of your interests, a bag of dicks?
Of course it was. It was, not anymore, but no. Back in the day when we worked at this restaurant called Red Oak, there was a secret society that we dubbed BOD, Bag of Dicks. And either you were in or you were out. And it was literally a secret society amongst the restaurant, front end of the restaurant, and back end of the restaurant too. But to where if you were a BOD, you got privilege, So I always say if I saw 2 people come to the door with dirty dishes, one's a BOD, one's not, the BOD always takes precedence. So anyway, that society still exists too. And so I took the podcast, and that's it started out with my brother and I in our bedroom because we were living with our parents at the time. And so we were literally holding shotgun mics because we didn't have broadcast mics in our bedroom, talking total, whatever came up, which was not that interesting, but that's how we learned. We did probably 10 episodes like that, just bringing our friends on, probably consuming too many substances that rendered the show not that interesting. And then eventually I moved to California and wanted to continue podcasting, but felt bad because my brother and I, Casey, started the podcast. We were kind of co-hosts, but we had been separated. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to create a whole new show called Sci-Fi and Friends. Sci-Fi being my nickname growing up. My last name's Seifert. And so in high school, they would just call me Sci-Fi, which I always I would appreciated that nickname because there's some nicknames out there that you don't want.
Yeah, my nickname was Bag of Dicks, so.
No way.
No,
that's a good one, dude. That's a good one. So when I moved to California in 2009 and then started Sci-Fi and Friends Garage with a guy named Wes Warner, who is probably one of the best episodes I've ever done. Was the first episode. He was possessed by the devil or something demonic. He flew to Paris. He was homeless for a while. He thought the devil was an old woman on an airplane that he was sitting next to. I mean, it's a wild story, and he's okay now, but he had a wild story. So that was the first episode, and it's still worth listening to. Wes is a good guy. He's a family man. I think he's got 6 kids. He's married. He's a science teacher, so he's good, but he went through a very tumultuous time when he was younger. But started there, and just it keeps evolving. Moved back from California in 2014, 15, and that's when I started doing the Sci-Fi and Friends podcast in my house, at my kitchen table. I told the wife, okay, I'm going to do it two times a week. And so 2 days a week, I would unload everything, set it up at the kitchen table so we couldn't have dinner, we couldn't have breakfast there or anything, but then I would take it down. And that worked for a while. And then we moved it into another room, and then we moved it now to where we are now, which is in a Creative Commons in Joplin, Missouri. There's probably 10 offices in this Main Street building. And of the 10, there's probably 4 podcasts, including mine. So that's kind of cool. You walk by and you can hear people talking and interviewing and so that's cool. So that's where we are now. So we're on episode 75. And if you look at all the episodes, you can kind of see this trajectory of evolution from sitting in a bedroom with shotgun mics. Thursday I had a good friend of mine on who was a former pastor of 40 years who does guidance and counseling. And, we're talking about all kinds of stuff, developmental psych and some psychedelic work and spiritual work and being productive and, untangling those spiritual, all kinds of things that I find fascinating. So it's been a long but cool and fun journey, an evolution of the show.
That's awesome, man. The people that are continuing doing what they're doing, they found something that they just enjoy doing, and then that kind of just drives it to keep going. It becomes worth it to unload a bunch of podcast equipment at your kitchen table every other day, and
definitely helps the sustainability. So if you do have something passionate, filmmaking for us, if you're not ready to wake up at 4 a.m. and unload a bunch of Pelican cases, then you don't want to be a filmmaker. I don't know what you want. You want to go to the party afterwards, which is okay. It's fine, and if that's what you want to do, that's what I want to do too. But
dude, the filmmaking life is not for everyone. I have seen so many people come in and out. It is a carny life.
It
man.
is.
You are just you're living in your work. The hours are crazy, but if you're passionate enough about it, it's all worth it. Honestly, at the end of the day. And I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. I can imagine myself doing other things, but I can't imagine myself not working in film and television and production. It's like I'm too deep in it now,
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, and I totally agree with that. And I feel like you're meant to be in this industry, into the creative industry. I think that's one reason we vibe so much, because we don't have any questions about if we should be here or not. We're like, oh yeah, we are here and we're meant to be here.
Yeah. Speaking of, bro,
what's that?
I don't know if you could. It says KOTFM.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is Leonardo DiCaprio gave me this.
They went all the way. I just went KFM. That was my abbreviation.
I'm gonna be frank. So Leo's assistant came up to me and asked how many people were in my department for these
that
hoodies.
British guy?
Yeah. No, it was the girl. It was just me and one other guy in my department, but I lied to her and I said there's 3 so that I could give my mom one of these hoodies.
That's the way to be, man.
Sorry, Leo. I
can spare it. Always get +1. I mean, even if it's for your mom or eBay, just grab another one.
Right. Okay, so going back in the podcast, I know recently you said you've hired an editor to start editing your podcast, but before you said you were editing everything, right? What is that like for you editing yourself? Because for me, it's pretty crazy, having to re-listen to myself and you're hyper analyzing everything. And was it anxiety inducing? Was it what were some of the struggles of having to edit your own stuff?
Well, excruciating really to start out with, because as you've heard, the camera doesn't lie. And what the camera sees is what the camera sees, and it's kind of truth in the sense that you can't hide from it. If you've ever watched a video on YouTube at double, triple, quadruple the speed, you can see people and how they move, and it's like, well, there's the pattern. The pattern is, this person, for me, example, messes with his beard a lot, because he's anxious or something. And so if you see that on that increased speed, you can start to dissect I should be more aware of that and not mess with my beard. So, I looked at it as an opportunity that I could grow, and here you go, and try to find the faults in what I was doing. A lot of it was in the beginning episodes, I interrupted people all the time, especially my brother, to where I would be listening to the podcast or editing it afterwards, and he would be on a really good point, or he'd have a story, and I would just crush this thing with the dumbest joke or segue. It's like I wasn't listening. And so, that was painful, especially because he's my brother. And it's like, oh man, I disrespected him. But then I was able to take that lesson to heart. And while I was in the podcast, episodes after, I could notice like, I'm about to say something and it's going to interrupt, and I could quell that urge and then allow the person to speak. And those are just all lessons that you learn by doing. I remember one time a podcast with my friend Caleb Clark. And I remember, we were both learning, probably unconsciously, it was after the fact I noticed it, but we were both learning how to monologue, and we were both learning how to take an idea and just speak on it for extended periods of time, because that doesn't happen in society. You don't get past one or two sentences before someone interjects, which is fine. Everyone has, a time limit, but in a podcast like right now, you're just letting me talk and this idea is flowing, and who knows where it's going to go, but that doesn't happen in society. So the first time Caleb and I did it, I remember it was like learning how to drive again. I could watch him and he'd get going, and then, he'd start to slow down, and he'd kind of look at me like, you going to say something? I'm like, no, there's still more of this idea to go. And then he'd take it back up, and then, finally I'd take over for him and get to the next subject. But so, editing it yourself, you're exposed to all your flaws and all your strengths, and you can either repulse from that and not accept what's there, or you can accept it and take it as a place on a map to where you are and say, okay, I'm here, but I want to be here. And if you take that truth and do that, you can make yourself better, which is not just with podcasting. You could expand that to anything. Why do athletes film themselves? They want to see why their pitch isn't correct. They want to see where their tennis swing is lacking, because camera doesn't lie, and neither does the audio. So if you're recording your voice and how you speak, I'm a guy that uses the word like a lot, and I try not to. I try not to, you know what I mean? But
definitely, dude. When someone's talking naturally in conversation, you try to assure them with yes and uh-hs and all these things, which in a conversation is very normal and very appropriate. Yeah. But with podcasting, oftentimes those little yeahs and ums, it's okay to do occasionally, obviously, but when someone's trying to get a big point through, it almost feels sometimes like you're interrupting them, or you're kind of just, messing with the flow a little bit. And
Yeah, it makes for the listener uncomfortable, at least for me, because there have been guests that have been on this tangent. And when I say, like you said, when I'm saying, yeah, oh, okay, I'm in it. I'm in the conversation. I'm fascinated. But, post, when this other person's on the treadmill listening to this, metaphysical monologue, it's like, shut up, Coltyn, let him talk.
Right.
Because that's how I felt. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, you're listening. Yes, you're in we're in a room that's, I'm 8 feet away from this guy. Yeah, I'm listening. I don't have to let him know. And I can do this. And I've tried to do visual. Because as long as I'm I don't have to give the audio, and then it kind of screws up the listener's experience.
I mean, it's cool because we're learning as we go, and there's nothing wrong with making these, the mistakes, quote unquote, and just fixing it and doing it better. Because especially with new media, I think with new media, there's more trial and error than with traditional film and television, because new media, there's less stake. If we mess up an episode, it's not going to cost $1 million to do another one, or to try, or even to just try and pivot and do a completely different thing. Versus in film and television world, if you make a movie and it was bad, then it's oh, that was a $4 million mistake. That's going to be an expensive lesson. So that's a lot what I like about the new media world. It's just there's so much opportunity to try things and make mistakes and learn and try other things and just continue to grow as you do it. And I think your story about how, your podcast has grown over time, and at first it was just you in your kitchen, and now you have a studio, and now you have an editor, and you're learning from editing your own footage. It's really cool to see the amalgamation of all that come together.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun journey too. You start out, at least I did with the podcast, thinking I knew what it was going to be. And then over time, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I don't, because I'm not Rogan. And though I look up to him and admire him in many ways, I'm not. So once I started doing more and more podcasts, I realized that, where maybe the show was trying to take me, where it's this is more interesting over here. If we do it like this, Rogan doesn't do too many remote podcasts, but like since you've shown me Riverbend, I'm going to open up the floodgates and start getting people on, remotely. But a lot of that, I think, with any project, new media, old media, personal or professional, a lot of times we get married to the idea of thinking that we know what it is, what it's about, or what it should be. And really, it's the process of finding out, discovering what it is about, what the theme is, what the structure is, what the meaning is behind the project towards the end. And then, it might spiral out even beyond that, What's it mean to the audience? What's it mean to the person looking at the paint on the wall? So that gets into some subjective art, philosophy, theory type stuff, yeah.
Do you feel like podcast hosting and analyzing these conversations and stuff have actually helped you not only be a better podcast host, but a better conversationalist in general?
1,000,000%. Absolutely. 1,000,000%. A better person overall, listening, voice inflection, eye contact, better conversationalist, better listener. Yeah, there's so much that you can derive, or that I've derived from, one, editing the podcast myself, but two, just doing them and bringing in different caliber of guests. If you notice, when I bring my wife in and we have a podcast, we're here shooting the shit, we're drinking whiskey, we're having a great time. There's absolutely no fear or nervousness, no anxiety. There's nothing there. It's just me and the wife. Then I bring in a higher caliber, like on Thursday, my friend Wes Davis, who's a former pastor of 40 years, very, very wise, very, very intelligent, very kind-hearted man, but to me is like up here. And I was very anxious, and I didn't curse a lot, and I brought up psychedelics a little bit, because I was nervous about it, but it's a big difference. But afterwards I felt so accomplished because I had sat down with this man that I admired for 3 hours. I kept up with him. I swapped some quotes and stories with him that he was impressed with, and it made me feel good. And so by changing those in and out, putting in a guest that's your best friend, that, no matter what happens, you're going to have a great time. And then someone that makes you feel a little anxious, because they are professional and they are smart. And if you flip up, man, maybe they call you out, I don't know. But by doing that, you push yourself and you learn on both levels, and you can put those together and take those into real life, which is something that I've learned by doing this podcast.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool that you can go back and forth from sitting in with just someone you're very comfortable with and shooting the shit, and then getting outside that comfort zone a little bit and growing as a conversationalist, as a host, and yeah.
It makes me wonder because, I've had some fairly high caliber people on who I would consider some authors. Nancy Allen, that worked with Robert Pattinson. Is it Robert Pattinson? No, James Patterson. James Patterson, the author that writes all writes all the books. She was pretty high caliber, and I was nervous to have her in. Then I think about, well, what if I could talk to, someone like Dr. Gabor Mate or Boyd Vardy, or, some of these people that I hear on other podcasts like Tim Ferriss. Like, what if I got those caliber of people on? Like, well, every podcast that I do, no matter if it's my best friend, my wife, or a professional person that I look up to, I'm hoping that they are building towards that episode to where, hey, welcome to the show, Dr. Gabor Mate. I've read all your books. I'm real excited to talk to you about, all your research. Hopefully it builds to that, to where who are you uncomfortable to talk to? Who's like, you can talk to anybody. Who cares what status, title? They're just people. So if you know how to talk to people, you're invincible in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work in film and television, so like we're very accustomed to getting these, high caliber talent. And like, last year we were on a movie set with like 3 of the most famous people in the world, and
Huge.
You realize,
That was wild.
Spending months and months with these people, you realize, they are just people, and like you can approach these people in a very similar way. Maybe not exactly the same, because if you're approaching a guy who has like 5 assistants in front of him, you have to, maneuver that in a way that's appropriate. But at the same time, they are just people, and they, they bleed just like we do, and you can approach them, and they have feelings, just,
Leo, I mean, I know he's a person, I think, but man, he definitely does not live in the same reality that we do. Like nothing like against him, like just watching him from afar. You know, there were several times I was hands, you know, I could have reached and touched him. So I'm like kind of observing him like, what, who are you? You know, and it's like, man, that guy lives in a different universe than I do. You know, which I would live in that universe too if I grew up in film and television and had ascended the heights of fame and attractiveness and success that he has. So nothing against him, but it was strange to be that close to an icon of that status. And then there's you and me in the corner talking about crypto like nerds.
Yeah. Crypto has been a wild ride the past few months for sure.
Ethereum had its merge. Cardano had a hard fork update.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. It's like crypto is a high risk investment. You never know, but especially if the government wants to just come in and, you know, start putting red tape everywhere. But I think I am in a lot of ways still very excited to see what's going to happen. I mean,
100%. Yeah, it's new technology. There's all kinds of, you know, NFTs were made fun of, which rightly so. You know, JPEGs selling for as much as they did, but the technology itself is pretty interesting as far as being able to harbor. Like one person said, you could keep real estate deeds on the blockchain, and then you could just switch them and swap them, you know, that fast. Hey, you bought this house. Here's the QPCR code. That's kind of cool, but there's probably a lot more there that we don't even know about because it's so new. And there's such a lack of I want to say lack of talent, but a lack of individuals in that space that can actually do stuff. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Programming and computers in general. So the more and more that people start to, you know, learn code and IT and surveillance or security and all that, the better it's going to get, hopefully. But definitely. Yeah, it is very exciting, and it's definitely not boring.
Yeah, it'll keep you on your toes for sure.
Yeah, you lose a little sleep. Yeah, were you in Celsius?
Oh no, I didn't get in.
Oh, thank God. I was donating plasma. I had a freaking needle in my arm, and I was like on Twitter, and then this Twitter thing said Celsius locks down all withdrawals. I'm like, oh my God, and I can't go anywhere. I'm like, there's a needle in my arm. I had a substantial amount on there, which. Yeah, we'll see. It's not over, but it hurts.
One thing I'm really, really curious, and this might be a hard thing to just like pull off the top of your head, but what are some of the biggest struggles you've had podcasting? Like a guest that you just like were not connecting with, or early on figuring out the vibe of the show, or editing, or graphics? Like what are just some of these struggles that like someone who's just starting out making a podcast might be able to like gain some insight from?
I would say personally some of the biggest challenges for me is like the lack of reward for doing the podcast. There's been so many times that I just ask myself, like, why am I doing this? I'm not making any money. I'm not building a career so much. You know, it's not like, if I do 100 episodes, then I will be able to become a radio host or something. You know, there's not like a trajectory. It's just kind of, I'm paddling down a river and I just kind of keep paddling, but I'm not quite sure where I'm going. But the thing that's kind of made it worth it is people that listen, that maybe they're my friends or maybe they're associates, or, you know, we do a lot of martial arts, jiu-jitsu and MMA training. And sometimes the guys, like just random people come up to me and go, oh, I listened to you and so on the podcast. I really liked when you talked about this. And that's just enough for me to be like, okay, well, that was worth it. You know, that's good. And then, you know, part of that too is, you know, using the clues that are given to you in your life about what you're calling or what your skills or what you're kind of meant to do. And I've had a lot of people tell me, you're good at conversating, you're good at producing media, whether it's short films or web stuff or, you know, TikToks or whatever. So like all those are little, people will tell you, and those are clues. And so, you know, just having the courage to follow, and, you know, at the end of the day, if none of this works out in the financial sense, or, you know, I never get more followers than 200 people, then, you know, so be it. That's the decision that I've made. But yeah, that would be a big challenge, doing it by yourself. There's so many, like, you know, there's so many facets. It can be expensive. These are not cheap mics. I did get cheap cameras, but they're not cheap mics. So to get started financially might be difficult. But then again, that's when you maybe change your idea of what you need to get started. Because really, you know, if you ask me, like, how would you start again? Everyone's got an iPhone or a smartphone that records pretty good audio. You could do that. Yeah. And you could just have two people hold a phone in a coffee shop or a quiet place and then sync those two audios together, and now you have an audio podcast.
For all new media, it is hard starting out because you're going to have no subscribers on YouTube. You're going to have, you know, 0 or 1 people watching you if you're a streamer. If you're a podcaster, you're going to throw out your podcast and maybe have like a handful of friends listen to it. And I think the theme that I've seen throughout these interviews is the people who continue doing it are people who find this medium that they just enjoy doing, regardless of the numbers and the financial success.
I've been doing this as a passion for like 10 years, I guess, a little bit, maybe about 10 years. And now I'm getting to the point like hiring the editor, and you know we're working on a schedule. Like, do we do every Monday, Thursday? Do I do a show? Do I do a show every Monday, Tuesday? 1 show a week, 2 shows a week. How detailed are we going to get? How like job oriented are we going to get? And I think hopefully that will take me to, you know, more professional levels to where it's consistent and it looks good and it sounds good and there's clips available for viewers to see the highlights of the show and whatnot, so then they're easy to share and all that kind of stuff. So I think it just depends on what sort of energy that you come at the project with and what sort of goals that you have for the project. If I wanted this show to be my career, could I do it? I absolutely think so, yeah. But I'd have to sacrifice everything else that I do, and I do a lot.
Yeah,
and I need to sacrifice some of that stuff to focus on. But I think that's probably where I am personally, is just kind of going through a pruning phase as far as what's a hobby, what's a career, what's holding me back, what's going to propel me forward. And those are difficult decisions because we live in an age of diversity and being able to do all sorts of stuff at once. Yeah,
but it makes it almost impossible to choose one because you're like, oh, but I could do this. Or you choose one and then you're like, but wait, should I be doing this instead?
Yes, right. I like to think of it as the Wikipedia biography. Have you ever read a Wikipedia page where it's like, Mike is a podcaster, writer, filmmaker, web designer. You know, he breeds puppies on the weekends and he has a garden. And it's like, it reminds me of like back in the old days, like, I am Coltyn, son of Doug, blacksmith of the north, you know, reigner of terror of dragons. This just goes on.
Mother
and
of
on
dragons.
And on. That's how I feel about today. Like everybody is trying to identify themselves with this long run-on sentence of things. And it's like, what are you compensating for? You know, like, I'm looking at you, Coltyn.
Yeah, now more than ever, it makes more sense to do so many different things. But then when someone comes up to you and they're like, so what do you do? Then you're like, oh, I don't even know what to say. How much time do you have?
Yeah, right, yeah. And that's the whole saying, you know, inch deep and a mile wide. You could do all these things and you're not going to get very deep in them because everything goes deep. Everything, no matter what it is. If you make fireworks, I promise you that the way that they mix those chemicals and the substances and how they blow up in the sky and how high they go, and I guarantee it goes so much deeper than what you think of a light and a fuse and pop. And that's with everything. Podcasting goes that deep. Jiu-jitsu goes that deep. My God, just name anything and they have a subreddit for it, and there are people on there that are like the masters, and they are the deepest ones. And if you're just like a hobbyist, like that's great and all, but like get out of our group. Like we are serious. We are falconers, you know, or whatever it is.
I do think it does make sense to kind of diversify what you do in a lot of ways. Like if you're a podcaster and a producer and a filmmaker, like you're going to do all those things, and then some of those things might have a few more doors open that you're going to go through. But then if that doesn't work out, you do have these other things to fall back on. And I think that is very important in a lot of ways. Going back a little bit with your podcast, Sci-Fi and Friends, if everything started going like just 100% smoothly, where could you see yourself in 10 years with the podcast?
Oh man. So if everything went, you know, smooth sailing, everything, every 3-point shot was a swish, I would say that the podcast would have a dedicated following. You know, I'm not saying like it's a global phenomenon, but there's a community that listens and enjoys it and appreciates it. And, you know, they have their ways of communicating, whether it's through Reddit or whatever. They gather and they're excited about who's coming on the podcast. And I'm able to speak with anybody that I want to, you know, anybody out there, you know, Jeremy Narby and, like I said, Dr. Gabor Mate and hell, Rogan himself, you know, like there's no one off the table that can't come in and talk. I would love to, you know, slowly build like a podcast nest egg type thing to where if people came to me and they said, hey, I got an idea for a podcast. I'm like, that's a good idea. Being able to help them produce it. Like it'd be awesome to do it in the same building. Like almost like a new media building to where it's like, yeah, our podcasts are over there, you know, our YouTube shows are over here. OnlyFans is in the back. Just kidding. But you know what I mean? Like everybody's together, everybody's together. And there's these serendipitous moments of people going to the kitchen or taking a break in the green room and like, what do you do? Like, oh, I'm on this podcast or I'm on this show or I'm working on this, to have those connections and I guess the serendipitous moments of creativity, that would be awesome, especially since, you know, I live here in the Midwest, which is much different for new media than on the coasts like LA and New York, because there's actually a industry there. You might go to a bar or a restaurant, you literally might be sitting next to an HBO executive who just you crack a joke and he thinks that it's funny, and you say, I'm Mike and I'm Tom or whatever, and what do you do? Like, oh, I have an idea for a show. Like, well, you're cool. I don't know. Is that how it works? I hope that's how it works.
There definitely is this like social currency in LA that like is one thing I've actually had to work on, because I'm not the kind of guy that, at least at this point in my life, I'm not the kind of guy that really goes out and hits the town, and like, you know, occasionally I'll go out with a group of friends, but oftentimes, you know, we're in our group and we're not like really like going to the bar and being like, hey, what do you do, man? Or you know. So that is something I'm trying to get a little better about, especially post COVID. You know, we're in a world that like we're just like kind of dipping our toe back in the water of like meeting people and going out and stuff. So there definitely is that social currency. Granted, I think it's very rare you actually like go to a bar and meet someone and like your career just takes off, but I think it definitely happens. I think it definitely happens.
That's what I struggle with here, or that's what I think about when I wake up every morning. I'm like, how do I crack this code of living here? But, you know, my dream would be to, you know, direct and show run a series for HBO or Netflix or something, you know, like that. How do I bridge that gap being here? And Killers of the Flower Moon definitely helped with that. To see a $200 million Apple produced, you know, A-list actors all over the place, and Martin Scorsese, you know, 3 feet from me on my home turf in Oklahoma, was like, oh wow, this feels very real. So this can happen. You know, I'm not in the middle of the boonies and not able to do this. There is a way. And then after that, you know, Reservation Dogs and Tulsa King and several other movies were produced in and around that area. So just that alone really pumped my spirits as far as like, yeah, this is possible. And this goes full circle back to new media. If we did not have new media, if the technology had not been democratized through DSLRs and digital videography and YouTube and Vimeo and all that, it would probably remain impossible to do anything of substance in the Midwest as far as TV shows or short films, movies, web series, podcasts. So we are definitely in the new era, and I guess I'm still trying to put it all together to make it happen. Because I used to believe that you had to be in LA. That's why I went there. That's why I moved there. But now I'm testing the new belief. Now I'm testing the new belief that you don't have to be there. You just have to be good enough for them to notice you. So that's my new philosophy, and we'll see how it turns out. Nick Pizzolatto, the writer and creator of True Detective, he had a Q&A on stage somewhere in LA, and one of the things he said was like, stop being an assistant to writers and to writers' rooms. Stop being a PA, because you're not going to do any writing. You need to find a place where your overhead is low and you can practice your craft and build your skill. And that's the one thing that the Midwest does have is it is easy to live here. My mortgage is a fraction of what the rent would be in LA. So
didn't you say that you have like 5 mortgages, right? Or like something like, 'cause you rent three. So all your mortgages combined are less than I pay in rent.
Still less than yours. Yeah. And 2 of those
That's insane.
And
all my rent's just going out the drain. At least yours is being reinvested into assets.
Yeah, I kind of. I mean, yeah, I'd love to live in LA. The energy and the people and the beach. I'd live there solely for the beach. I was a Huntington Beach boy when I lived there in 2009 and 10. But yeah, there is something to say. Like all of that resource is expanded a little bit better here. Well, maybe, but you're in the heart of it, dude. You got a sponsor on your podcast. You were not a PA on Killers of the Flower Moon. You were effects person. So I mean, like, there are pros and cons to each. So I'm not saying that your rent is going to places that maybe that you can't follow or see, but they're definitely beneficial to you.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I'm so grateful for all the opportunities I've gotten since I moved out here. It's a struggle, but it's like you said, we know that this is what we're meant to do, and that's what's really helped push me and made me not go and move back or go work at a bank or something.
I have plenty of friends and acquaintances throughout the years who, like, no disrespect to them, obviously I've thought about it many times, but I see on Instagram that they're a real estate agent now, which is they used to be an actor with me. I used to do background acting for a long time and trying to be an actor, and that's where I met these guys. And now they're real estate. I don't care. Like, they look happy, they look fulfilled, they look like they're married now, they have kids, they're living a totally different life. That's fine. I'm going down with the ship. You know what I mean? Like, it ain't.
Dude, we're Vikings, man. We got it. We're just like gonna keep fighting until something happens.
Yeah, it's either gonna happen or it's not. But I ain't going anywhere. We'll figure it out one way or the other. If I have to build my own movie studio in Joplin, Missouri, well, so be it. We'll make it happen.
Dude, let me know, man. I'll come out there and dig trenches.
There you go. Yeah, you're hired. We pay in Doge.
Oh God. Oh no.
It's the fork of Doge. It's like Doge 2. It's like the Chihuahua coin.
Sick. Yeah. Shiba Inu.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, if you ever need help, man, I mean, I'm totally willing to, help you out with whatever,
Here, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because you're a wise guy, a smart guy, and
wise guy,
creative. You're a wise guy. That's what I thought as soon as it left my mouth. You're a smart guy, and you're in the industry. So, like, one of my goals would be to. So my strategy right now, being where I am, I'm thinking, okay, I make some short films to build some sort of reel or some sort of backlog in order to shop around to a film festival or to these producers to get involved in, more serious stuff rather than an independent, no budget, friend produced type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you were trying to do that, if your goal, like I said, was to become a showrunner or director for HBO, and you have this idea in your head swimming around for a series that you think is pretty good, what would you do to get to that point? Would you create short films and would you take my strategy, or would you say, no, I would do something completely different to get there?
Okay, so if my goal was to showrun and direct a show, and I have an idea for a show, the first step is to get that show outline as detailed and like tangible as possible. There's outlines I've read out here that are 100 pages long. I mean, it gets
like
crazy.
Show Bible, that's what they call that.
Yeah. Get your show, but the outline is more like Word docs, which is just like kind of like frame, like just lots of text explaining exactly what happens throughout the series, all the storylines, character, outlines and stuff like that. Whereas the Show Bible oftentimes is has a lot more pictures, and it gives you a little more idea of the kind of the vibe of the show. It gives you a little more like show some
mood.
examples of what the cinematography might look like, or some of the locations. And so I think that's very important. And I think what you said earlier of like getting some sort of reel out there of like things that you've directed. And granted, like it can be one project. I think it's better to have one really good project that showcases what you're capable of than going out there and trying to get 5 short films made so that you can prove that you can make short films. Because, I mean, so, you know, there's a funny saying in the film industry that the 2 jobs on set that you can have with no experience is a PA and a director. Yeah, I mean, awesome. It's true. I mean, oftentimes directors come. I mean, they come out of nowhere, and so I do think like if you can get one, it doesn't even have to be a full short film. Maybe it's just a scene of this show that you're trying to make. Like it's called a sizzle. So like you take the most compelling scene in the pilot or something along those lines, and you just go out there and try to film it. And granted, that might cost a little money. If you can find a way to fundraise a little money from either crowdfunding or, you know, some card dealer who wants to get into the producing world and he's willing to throw you $5,000. Like,
that is funny, dude. It's like, I think this is probably a good route. This is a good bet to take. And that's pretty much what I do every day, is try to build these shows in my head and build these Bibles and stuff. And I think I get discouraged because there is no feedback. There is no like, no, you're doing the right thing. Like you are, what the energy that you are putting into this is actually growing and building. And at some point it's going to catch and it's going to go. Mm-hmm. But I think just being in isolation that I am, it's just kind of like, wow, this is just a fruitless endeavor. And everybody's got an idea for a show. And I bet this show's been, you know, written down 5,000 times. It probably has, but how can I make it better? So to hear that, what you're saying is like fantastic. It gives me hope and confidence. And I appreciate your insight.
And I think you're totally right. Every single person I meet out here has an idea for a show, and they'll pitch it to you at a bar. And it's sometimes like really annoying. But the thing that everyone out here doesn't have is a written outline. They don't have anything written down. So it's like, like I have some buddies out here that will talk to me for an hour about their show idea. I'm like, dude, why are you talking to me about this? You should be writing this down, bro. Like this, so that you can show a studio executive, or like, do you want this bad enough that you're willing to put in the work of actually putting it in? Or do you just want to tell some guy at a bar and hope that like, I'm going to magically connect you with some executive that's just going to give you an opportunity without you putting in the legwork beforehand? Granted, I'm not saying that's you. I think that because I've seen your work. But I've seen your work ethic with like podcasting and on film. And I do think that you have the work ethic to actually write it down, even if you haven't already.
Because it takes an immense amount of energy, because up here it's perfect, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, the climax and this, the character arc. Wow, it's unbelievable, you know. And then you start to write it down and you're like, this is shit.
The first draft's always going to be shit. It's always going to be shit.
That's okay.
No one has written a first draft that they film.
I like to think of it as, I'll have to share this with you. I have this like document on Milanote. Do you use Milanote?
No, I don't know what that is.
You will love it. Milanote is a software program it's more of like a bulletin board. It's very visual based, and you can build these, you know, graphs and diagrams and drop in pictures, and it's awesome for new media. But on Milanote, I built this kind of like a writing show design outline of things that I've learned and then translated it into my own words. And one of the concepts that I've developed is what I call low resolution to high resolution. So sometimes you have a character that's low resolution. He's a 6'5", you know, burly guy. So he's tough. He looks like Tony Soprano, right? That's very low resolution. And then as it begins to translate into higher resolution, you realize, well, he's not a man, he's not 6'5", he's a 5'6", blonde-headed girl, but that girl has the temperament of that sort of character before. Mm-hmm. And so, same with dialogue. Anytime I'm trying to write dialogue, sometimes the dialogue is so elementary, you know, like, give me the gold, you know, and it's like, okay, that's low resolution. Now, how do we rewrite that to be high resolution and to not be so on the nose, you know, and to say something along the lines of, you know, my family's never had money or something like that. It's saying the same thing, but it's not so, you know, elementary. And I think if people took that concept of low resolution, just getting the idea out, getting the block of marble or whatever, and then refining it over and over again until it's like, this looks good. This sounds good. This represents my ideas that I had. I like that concept, and it's helped me a lot. Creative collaboration. I mean, that's where you get the greatest ideas. You know, every once in a while, there's the one genius, the Tarantino. That's why there's only one of them. You know, I don't feel like I'm him, but the collaboration of what if, yes, and what if, yes, and then it's like, wow, I would have never gotten here. This, once again, back to my point of thinking and believing that you know what it's about and what it is, and it's like, no, you don't. You feel like you do, but if you allow these other energies, I guess, to come in and to help form it, it's most likely going to be a better project. I guess the part that you'd have to be careful of is losing control and having it go too far in one way or the other. And I guess that's what makes a good showrunner or a good director, I guess, is to be able to manage that sort of input and output. That's my guess. Let me ask you this: in the form of new media, right? Because I think TV shows. So let's see. You know, back in the day, you had to be in the club. You know, Spielberg and those guys, you had to be in the club. And then it moves forward, and it's like, okay, now we're in Albuquerque, now we're in Atlanta, now we're in Vancouver, and now it's like, now we're in the basement of my mom's house filming a movie for Netflix or whatever, and you wonder, like, where this industry, the industry is moving so fast and changing so quickly, where it's like, man, what do we focus on? Do we focus on YouTube originals, where you make what are people consuming? People are consuming everything. They're consuming, you know, football games on Thursday night. They're flipping through TikTok. TikTok has made me laugh harder than most comedies that I've ever seen in my life, and some of them are more poignant than the best written drama that I've ever seen. And so there's something to be said about that. And I guess, not sure if there's a question here or not, but it's like traversing the world of new media. We just fractionalized it into a endless amount of revenue or streams of everything, Twitch and gaming, and now we got VR and social media. I was just like, what do we do? Do we just pick something and go for it? I mean, it's like you have to have a podcast and you got to have social media. Like, what's going on? I'm overwhelmed.
These things cross like lines more than ever. Like, YouTubers are in movies. The Twitch streamers are in movies. If you saw Free Guy, like Pokemon and Jacksepticeye are actors in that movie playing streamers.
Way.
I mean, TikTokers. What's that guy, Cabby Lame? Like the biggest TikToker in the world who never even says a word. Like, he's doing promotions with Idris Elba, like promoting movies and stuff. I think there's now more than ever, we can do it all. So you just need to find what drives you the most. Is it podcasting? Is it making movies? Is it doing YouTube? Is it making TikToks? And maybe it's a combination of all of them. And then you just like, okay, how much time do I want to devote to the podcast? How much time do I want to devote to the TikToks? How much time do I want to devote to developing this script so that I can do all this stuff? That stuff can like feed the other stuff. Like your TikToks.
Like stacking in a way.
Yeah, your TikToks promote your podcast. And then your podcast is going to give you some credibility to approach people with movie ideas. And now more than ever, it all is kind of the same thing. New media and old media are very intertwined nowadays. It used to be you did YouTube or you did movies. Now it's like you can do both if you want. Yeah. There's Hollywood directors that have YouTube channels, like big Hollywood directors. And so I think it's going back to what you were talking about earlier of just like finding that passion and seeing where that leads.
Yeah, and like you said, stacking these things, or crisscrossing them to say, you know, you don't, if you're really good at podcasting like you are, you could build that, and that's what your credibility starts on. This idea is that this is an idea that I've had with martial arts, to where people say, I'm not going to do, you know, this martial art because I don't want to study Taekwondo, but maybe that's all you have to study. It is better to go to that Taekwondo class, even though you want to study jiu-jitsu. You might not have a school next to you, but you have Taekwondo. Go do that. Learn the disciplines, learn the mindset in order to train this martial art. And then someday you will have access to a jiu-jitsu school, I promise you, or an MMA class, or kung fu or whatever it is, and you will be better at that secondary martial art because you trained the first one. And so in that same concept, if all you have is a podcast, or all you have are the tools and technology to do a podcast, by doing that podcast, even though you want to make movies, I'm talking to myself, you are building the mindset and the network and the resources to one day be able to do other things. It's mastering something. Musashi said it, once you know the way in one thing, you see it broadly in all things. That's kind of the same thing. If you can do one thing really well, it's like, well, I bet you I can do it over here too. Which is that's a great way to look at it. The way that you've brought it up to say it's all overlapping so much that it doesn't really matter if you focus all on your TikTok, because if that becomes successful, then you are able to open other doors to YouTube channel, to whatever, twitching. There's a guy on TikTok that I don't know his name, but he used to be a teacher, and he does all the kids. Like he's a bigger guy with a beard. He's got some tattoos. He just like recreates these times in the classroom. So like what kids says, what kids would say. Right. So he's like, why are you standing up? And he's like, my mom and dad don't sleep in the same bed. And he's like, okay, he's like, just stuff like that. He's a Twitcher now, or Twitch streamer, Twitcher. Do they call them Twitchers? We call them tweakers here in the Midwest. No, he started as this TikTok guy, or at least I think he did, doing these recreations of his classroom. He taught kindergarten or whatever, something young. And then translated that to every time I see him now, he's gaming, which is like good for him. But I like how he transitioned, and I didn't have to stay with TikTok. He still makes TikToks and lives off of them, but he's able to jump into streaming. And now his TikTok crowd comes over to watch him stream, and he is very entertaining even when he streams. So yeah, I love that the way that you proposed that and framed that whole thing is new media, old media. It's all under the curtain of this thing we call the internet now, and it's all connected 100. In some way.
It's all storytelling.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Some of these TikToks that I've seen or Instagram reels are so well done. They are so brilliant. They are so masterfully created in such a small space with such limited technology, yet they're profound. Some of them are absolutely profound. And I think sometimes, myself included, that have that idea from old media, like, oh, it's like fine art versus pop art type of thing. Like, well, it's not really media. It's just a TikTok on an iPhone. It's like, that TikTok was hilarious. Everything about it was hilarious. The acting was superb. The editing was off the charts. You cannot say that was not good. It wasn't a movie. No, it's not. It's not supposed to be a movie. It's entertainment, though, and it moved me in a certain way. It imbued me with some sort of feeling.
Some of these TikToks reach more people than a blockbuster movie, and it's like, it's how do you want to reach people, and what are the resources you have? Because it's like, yeah, some people don't have $1 billion or the network to make a movie right now, but they do have a phone, and they want to tell stories. And they can go onto TikTok and tell stories to the best of their ability with what they have access to. One day they can grow that into whatever they want.
Yeah. Again, it's low resolution to high resolution. It's like this TikTok is showing, the emotion of losing a pet versus Marley and Me, right? 2-hour long movie, great movie, makes you cry. It's very sad, very emotional. But they're saying the same thing. This is 30 second TikTok where, they have to take him to the vet or whatever. Sorry to bring up such a sad subject, but they're saying the same thing. Low resolution, high resolution. You can learn from it all.
Yeah, and I hopefully people listen to this and they can learn something about podcasting and new media and old media and how it all just connects and,
Yeah, I hope so.
If you approach it in a way that you pursue the passion first, more often than not, you're going to get to a place that you're happy with. It may not be the place that you intended to get to, but it's a place that you're going to be fulfilled.
Isn't it Nietzsche's quote, he who has a why can withstand any how? Is that what it is? Or he who has a how can understand? See, I don't know, something like that. But yeah, that's what I mean. If you have the reason, if you have your priorities straight and you know why you're doing this, or at least you have decided why you're going to do this. When those difficult times come in, you will have refuge where you can batten down and get past the storm, which is where the growth takes place. If you're confused and you're in pain, you're growing. You remember growing pains? I was confused and my legs hurt, but I was growing. So I think a lot of times today people interpret the pain of growth as something's wrong. It's like, no, you're right where you're supposed to be. If you're confused,
the comfort is the bad thing. The comfort is the dangerous thing. I mean, it's like what the Buddha said, all humans are entitled to two things, death and suffering. Yeah. That's the only consistency that we have. And suffering is not always a bad thing in a lot of ways. It can teach us a lot.
Yes. Just, I mean, there is suffering. Like, I don't want to get bit by a shark. That's unnecessary suffering. But, the suffering of staying up late and, editing a podcast or sitting down in front of a laptop and trying to type a screenplay and dealing with all the voices in your head about how dumb these characters sound or whatever, like that sort of suffering and perseverance to push through and say, I'm going to do this, even if I do it imperfectly, is better than not doing it at all. One is better than negative 9,278,000, whatever number you want to put. One is better than that negative, or zero. Anything is better than zero. If you sat down and did a 10-minute podcast that you completely wrecked and interrupted and farted on and everything and just totally blew it, it's better. It is better. Yeah, it is better than not doing it at all. So my mentor said, a perfect screenplay, 100% perfect screenplay in your mind is not as good as a mediocre 60% screenplay on paper. One is a fantasy, and you mentioned that with your friends or with your people that pitch you ideas and stuff. One's a fantasy, and it's okay if you clarify that. It's like, wouldn't this be cool? Yeah, that'd be cool. Like, I'm not going to do anything with it, but that would be cool. Like, it's fun to riff with your friends like that. But there's also a thing like, that's a good idea, and you should do something with that. You have to exert the energy to go into the imagination and pull that out some way, the best you can, into the reality. You have to make it real, I guess that's what artists do with their medium. They pull out whatever's in here or here out into reality. Very difficult, very painful, takes a lot of energy and sacrifice.
Sometimes you do get stuck and you need to go to another writer and be like, I have this and this, but I just can't figure out this part, or I can't figure out how to get from A to B. Or go to a producer and be like, hey, I want to film this, but I have no money. How do I get money?
Yeah.
Like I think especially with new media people, sometimes you do think that you just have to do every single thing yourself. But sometimes you need to hire an editor because you don't have the time. Or sometimes you need to like reach out to a buddy and ask him to like look at your show and give you tips.
Yeah. I struggled with that for a long time just because of my ego. I wanted to be the filmmaker. I wanted to be the artistic guy. And so anytime someone's like, we're doing a shoot this weekend, I was like very threatened, And through a lot of deep work and just maturing over the years, now I so appreciate people when they say, I'm a filmmaker. And I'm like, sit next to me. Let's talk. Like, what are you doing? What are you struggling with? What are you working on? Can I help? Can you help me? I don't feel threatened nearly as much. And that's come through personal development and weeding out, internal conflict and accepting and claiming what you want to be. In the past, I might have never admitted to you, a good friend, that I wanted to work for HBO and have a series in my head or several series, and I would never admit that. It just seemed so ridiculous. But now it's like, no, that's what I want, and I'm okay with people saying, "What a crazy fool! He's gonna try to like." I don't care, I'm where I feel like I should be, and I'm working towards where I want to go, and I'm okay with that. So but it's nice to have people in the same industry that have similar problems, and to not be threatened by them, but to be inspired by them. To where like, you wrote that? That is brilliant. Like, that line is amazing. Or you recorded that with him? Like, dude, I would love to listen to that. That podcast had so many cool moments that really changed me and inspired me, and it's better to be in that mindset.
100%. Yeah, and learn from their mistakes, learn from their success, because then you don't have to make the same mistakes. I had very similar feelings in the film world when I was first starting out, when like someone got just this amazing opportunity that was an opportunity that I wanted too. I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh man, why don't I have that opportunity? But you realize over time, like, it's not a zero-sum game. Like, someone
Right.
having their own show does not take away from you having your own show. In fact, if there's someone close to you, in a way, it lifts you up because you're closer
Yeah.
to this world, and you can talk to them and you can get advice from them. And the same way with money, it's like if someone has a really great job, like they can probably give you some opportunities to get some money as well. Get that money.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Being inspired by, being motivated by, if a friend of mine makes a short film and Netflix calls him, like, that can happen to me, and he's my friend, so hopefully I can tag along with him. But
Yeah.
This scarcity mindset that a lot of people are in, a lot of artistic people, I think that's just because they're insecure, or at least I was. I was insecure with myself
same.
and what I was trying to create. Yeah, but once you understand, like, it's infinite, it doesn't stop. The streaming services can't get enough content. People will scroll until they pass out at night trying to find the next funny TikTok or whatever. The human cannot get enough content. So, and also there's been every movie, every idea has pretty much been done, and we just kind of dress up in different ways. Who cares? It's great. It's great for you. It's already been done. You can do it again with your little spin on it. It's like, it should free you up to be like, yeah, you can do this. And the only thing holding you back is you. Just don't be afraid. Team up with the best. Don't you want the best? I thought about, if my show got picked up, I would want the best, biggest, badass writer's room I could possibly get my hands on. I would want the greatest directors. I would want to feel like the smallest, most insignificant, least skillful person on that crew, because then I'm gonna have an awesome show.
Yeah.
That's what we should want. To be the slowest person on the track, or the dumbest person in the room, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, surround yourself with people who are better than you, and they'll lift you up. If you surround yourself with people who you're the best and they're all scrubs, then it's like you're just going to be flexing and showboating and never growing, ever.
No, you'll feel good for a moment. You'll feel superior, and then you'll realize, wow, this is a very fleeting feeling, and it doesn't go anywhere, and it actually starts to taste bad after a while, and, oh God, what am I doing? But if you're around people that are better than you, I'm personally speaking, I'm probably going to feel a little tinge of ego, trying to protect myself. Like, these guys are all good writers. All these people in here are really good at writing dialogue and creating character. I'm not that good, but dude, I can learn from them and watch how they do their work, and maybe they can help me. And that doesn't take away from my skills and my strengths that I still have. It's like that whole comparing thing. I'm comparing to them, and just to learn from them, I'm going to be better. So you get off the set, or you get off your project, it's like, man, I'm better for it because I was around those people. Then that's the vibe, that's the energy that you want. That's what you want. So that when you are that thing someday, when you are the top dog or part of the top dog squad, and you see that person come in, and it's like you can help them and build them up, rather than have this, selfish, egotistical stance of, I'm the best and I'm the best it ever was. Like, no, I'm going to help as many people as I can, because I was them once, and I'm not the best, because you never will be. It's a lifelong lifetime of learning and growing till the very end.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially in this industry, because it's so subjective. Art, I mean, what's the best art? Art speaks to different people in different ways.
Yeah.
And
And there is technique to it, filmmaking. There's cinematography and camera angle, and there's the editing aspect, the pacing, the writing. Like, there's a lot in our field of work, but I'd say you could probably master those. But still, even if you do master those, then what do you do with it? You take it to the next level. It's like there's always another level. Kurosawa, many people would say he's a master at cinema. It's like he just kept going, kept going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Well, dude, I feel like we could probably riff for another hour, but I try to edit these down to an hour, and we've been going for an hour and a half. So
that's all good. I'm having a great time. So
yeah, man, this is so fun, and hopefully like we can do another episode.
I'd love to. I'd love to, man. Yeah, I'm excited for you to release this and see the response, and hopefully it imbues people with motivation and helps them think a little differently. Maybe whatever project they're trying to do, if they're trying to start a podcast or work better on their Instagram, or, I mean, my God, start an online store, a bakery, whatever it is. I want people to be filled with courage and have a vision and have the courage to pursue that vision, because that's what I've done. And while it's been hard, it's been worth it. So that's what I would say.
That's awesome, man. Can you give me some plugs? Can you plug yourself?
Yes, sir. So I'm on pretty much every social media there is. Have you heard of Be Real? Are you on Be Real?
I've heard of it. I don't do it.
That's my Gen Z friends helping me out there. So,
yeah.
But Instagram at Coltyn Seifert, Facebook Coltyn Seifert, Twitter's Coltyn Seifert. Obviously, the podcast is called Sci-Fi and Friends. You can find it on YouTube and Spotify. What else? TikTok, same thing, Coltyn Seifert. Hit me up on any of those. I'm mostly working on the podcast and the YouTube. But yeah, I will respond to any of you because I like talking to people.
Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely go check out Coltyn and Sci-Fi and Friends. Yeah, and hopefully we'll get to have him again on this podcast, because I know we can go several more hours and shoot the shit.
Oh, yeah, we have lots of topics that we can dive into. So, but Mike, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I had a really good time. Thank you for your insight. I will definitely say I feel more confident, with some of the projects that I'm trying to do with your input on there. It's like, okay, my ship is sailing at least in the right direction. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you, man.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, I'm inspired by you, man. Your podcast and everything. It's great, man. I really think that you're on a great path, and I'm excited to see where it heads.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
That was episode 2 of The Mike Show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Go check out Coltyn Seifert and Sci-Fi and Friends podcast. It's always great talking to Coltyn. Thank you to my sponsor, Media U, and associate producer, Natalie Baltini. And thank you all for watching and listening. Stay tuned for more episodes. Peace.